All right, thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to Orion Bionetworks monthly webinar. This is number 7 in the series. Today's presenter is Francis Jeanson, Program Lead Informatics of the Ontario Brain Institute. Francis Jeanson is a French journalist and philosopher, best known for his activities with the French Army of Liberation during the Algerian colonial struggles. He was friends with Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre. Wait, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, that's the wrong Francis Jeanson. I looked it up on Wikipedia. Forgot to erase that. Francis has joined the Ontario Brain Institute in the spring of 2013 to help design and implement the Brain Code Neuroscience Informatics platform. After completing his honors Bachelor's of Science at the University of Toronto in Cognitive Science and Artificial Intelligence, and having spent some years working as a software developer, Francis pursued a Master's in Evolutionary and Adaptive Systems at the University of Sussex, which he completed in 2008. He finally moved on to pursue a PhD in cognitive science with a focus in neural coding theory and application at the Carleton University, which he completed in the winter of 2014. Francis possesses a long-standing interest in complex systems, artificial intelligence, computational analysis, and modeling. He's excited to work with the Ontario Brain Institute and hopes to see the enormous potential that the Brain Code Neuroinformatics platform can offer for research into the functioning of brain discoveries it can help make in brain-related disorders. Prior to his academic career, Francis was a competitive cyclist who rose to the top of his sport, having competed in 13 consecutive Tour de France as a domestique for various teams. His last engagement was with the U.S. Postal Service team led by Lance Armstrong, but he
Oh,
was dismissed.
is this maybe that's an overextension? I'm sorry, then.
Oh, all right. Oh, sorry. Well, you missed. I didn't get to the funny part. We will continue on. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, please remember to type in your questions at any time. Dr. Jeanson will answer them at the end of the presentation, but you're welcome to type them in during the presentation or at the end. So, Dr. Francis Jeanson presents BrainCode, a neuroinformatics platform for brain discovery.
Fantastic. Thank you, Len. I'm glad you realized the difference between this previous Francis Jeanson that many people can find online, and although I'm a big fan of philosophy, and fortunately I don't have the credential of this other Francis Jeanson that exists. But thank you for this. So thank you, everybody. I would like to especially thank the Orion Bionetworks for inviting me for this talk. In particular, Dr. Magali Haas, with whom we've been collaborating and having fantastic discussions over the entire realm of neuroinformatics and data sharing. And I'd like to thank everybody part of the Percolation group also for setting up this webinar, and thanks to the audience for being here. So I'll now start going through the outline of what I like to sort of cover with you today. So I'll begin by really talking about the values that the Ontario Brain Institute has in terms of research in the neurosciences and what we're doing here in the province of Ontario in Canada. I'll then move on to talk a little bit more about the BrainCode platform, which is really the central, the pivotal components that really allows us to collect research data across the province and make it available to other researchers in neuroscience and clinicians, and also to industry and other collaborators. And finally, I'll sort of dive more into the realm of big science and sort of give it early insights as to how it can really start to tackle this interesting and fascinating new world that is big science, in a way that derives from big data, and looking at the notions of deep and broad data. Begin with the values that we have at OBI. One of the central focuses that we have, and it's really a critical part of what we want to accomplish, is to be patient-centered and really be able to attack salient disorders that will make a difference for patients down the line. We also want to maximize neuroscience excellence across Ontario through the integration and collaboration of different groups, researchers, clinicians, industry partners, and even researchers outside of the field of neuroscience that have expertise that they can bring to the table. We want to standardize assessments and diagnoses that are being used in the field of neuroscience across the board of the different data modalities. We also want to build on past investments, and this is crucial. because we are a relatively early organization, and make sure that we are effective in the way that we make use of existing infrastructures and investments that have been made across the province, but also internationally at different levels. And we also have a partnership approach. This is critical. Really working with a number of different organizations from the government, research and clinicians, patients and patient advocacy groups, as well as industry. Really, the approach that the Green Institute has is this is really the platform that I'm showing you here on the slide. It really overlaps a number of different components. We have a high impact translational number of programs that we fund directly. We have a central patient information system, which is BrainCode, and in which I'll get to talk about a little bit more in just a moment. We also have mechanisms to engage and support industry. This is critical, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the collaborations that we form, and also identifying ways to really support the industry in neuroscience across the province. We also have an excellent training and entrepreneurship program to support these early thinkers and innovative entrepreneurs in the field of neurotechnologies and neuroscience. And overall, we have a general platform that really translates this knowledge to the overall community in all of these sectors. Well, I first want to also introduce you to the integrated discovery programs that we fund across the province of Ontario. These are critical because they really show that there's an uptake in the field of neuroscience by the researchers and clinicians, and they share the vision that we have here at the Ontario Brain Institute in collecting and sharing data and making it available for better discovery. So we currently fund 5 different programs across Ontario. These are cerebral palsy, epilepsy, neurodevelopmental disorders, neurodegeneration, and depression. And we have numbers here that show you the number of individuals, the researchers and clinicians that are part of these programs, the number of industry partners that work with them, the patient groups that are engaged with these programs, and also the number of expected patients that they will be recruiting through the various studies that they hold. So there's really this notion of diversity across the different forms of disease that we have in neuroscience, and engaging these researchers to work more closely together and to share their data and lead to better discovery. So to give you a better idea of the number of institutions that are involved across the province, we have this diagram here showing you how this is really spread across the province of Ontario. And we also actually have a few institutions outside of Ontario in Canada that are part of our programs. So some numbers here: we have, as I said, 5 integrated discovery programs, over 200 researchers across the programs. These include 35 plus institutions, 40 plus companies that are involved. We have over 5 data types that are being collected across the different diseases. And we're expecting over 5,300 patients to be recruited over the period of the next 3 to 4 years. This matrix that I'm showing you now really captures in a simple yet in a way that really speaks to what we want to accomplish from a data neuroscience in terms of the opportunity that we really have here. So in the vertical columns, we see the different programs that we have and how they cover the different types of diseases in neuroscience. And in the vertical rows, we have we really have the different types of modalities in terms of the data types that are being captured across the programs. So this spans neuroimaging, clinical data, demographics data, genomics data, proteomics data, as well as others. So really the interesting and sort of the really opportunity that we see here is that now we can not only capture and understand data for a particular disease type, but we can actually start to possibly make correlations and look for ways to treat diseases by understanding them in a much more profound way, by looking at commonalities, for example, between the diseases. As we know, the occurrence of neurodegeneration is often accompanied by things like depression, for example, and maybe looking at what are the markers that really lead to these sort of comorbidities. It would be is an excellent opportunity, and this is something that we hope to accomplish with the platform that we're putting together. The brain code neuroinformatics platform that it is. So a simple definition: it's an extensible large-scale informatics platform that manages the acquisition, storage, processing, and analytics of multidimensional data collected from patients with a variety of brain disorders. What are our guiding principles? First and foremost, privacy and security. We collect data from a number of patients across the province, and the requirements to maintain that data private and secure is of utmost importance. And it really transpires throughout the process that we take to develop the informatics platform as BrainCode. We want the platform to be open and collaborative, really making the data available to as many people as possible. We want to encourage the collaboration of individuals that access this data and also develop tools to analyze and look at the data. We want the platform to be interdisciplinary. We see that this is a critical aspect of neuroscience. And the notion of integration across the different fields. The platform must be also patient-centered. Really, this is a core value for OBI, and it is as well for BrainCode. The standardization is also a critical component in which I'll develop a little bit further in the presentation. And it's key in the sense that we really need to make sure that data across the different programs are collected in a way that is as standard as possible, so that down the line, we can actually perform analyses that are that make sense and that can actually really make the types of discoveries that we're after. And ultimately, a principle which really is something that's more fundamental is really having this ability for discovery for greater health impact. Give you an overview of how the sort of what we call the inputs and outputs of BrainCode, how we receive funding and where the data goes. We get our funding primarily from the province of Ontario, which is then given to provided to the Ontario Brain Institute. We then disseminate this funding to the different integrated discovery programs, which are listed here on the right of the diagram. These programs are then not only engaged in their own studies and research, but are also engaged in the process of making this data available and sharing that data through the BrainCode portal. Once the data is on the BrainCode portal, it goes through a number of steps of curation and pre-processing to then make it available to researchers that are not only part of the integrated discovery programs, but also international researchers and other groups. Finally, the last component here on the bottom left is the connection with other existing databases. So this is really where the federation component of BrainCode becomes essential, being able to bring data from other sources onto BrainCode so that the data can be aggregated and a better view of the patient, a better characterization, I should say, of the patients can be made. This diagram really shows what data integration across Ontario is with respect to the different institutions that the Ontario Brain Institute funds. Over 35 institutions, as I said, then are connected to the together they form the 5 different integrated discovery programs that we fund, and finally that data flows into BrainCode from the programs. On top of this, BrainCode, as I mentioned, is also in the process of developing partnerships with a number of groups for the federation of data. So, for example, the Canadian Traumatic Brain Injury organization that is Pan-Canada. We are working with them on establishing ways to actually provide a way for the data from their own data sets to be included into BrainCode. Equally, we're going through pilot stages of looking at ISIS, or the Institute for Clinical and Evaluative Sciences, on making administrative data from hospital visits available on BrainCode. Who are the experts and who are really the people behind BrainCode? So we first have expert leadership coming from the INDOC Consortium. This is the group that really develops the platform on behalf of the Ontario Brain Institute. This is led by the INDOC research group, who really focus on the platform development and clinical and molecular data management and analysis. There's the part of this consortium is also the Electronic Health Information Laboratory, based in Ottawa. We work really on the security components that are part of BrainCode and the de-identification tools that we use. We also have the Rotman Research Institute, based in Toronto, and they work really on the image and neuroinformatics tools that we have for BrainCode. And finally, we have the High Performance Computing Virtual Laboratory based in Kingston, Ontario, who provide the hardware and networking technology that are required for secure storage of patient data on BrainCode. We also have expert leadership in the International Advisory Committee that has been formed to help guide the process of development that we and the evolution of the platform as we move along. So we have experts from around the world. Dr. Daniel Marcus from Washington University at St. Louis. He's part of the Neuroinformatics research group and provides and works with this expert leadership group on a regular basis. We have meetings with this group twice a year. We have Dr. Rodrigo Lopez from the European Bioinformatics Institute. Dr. Charles Beck, who's now a neuroinformatics consultant based in the US. Dr. Anne Kavukian, who's the previous Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario, and now is leading the Institute for Privacy and Big Data at Ryerson University. And finally, Dr. Sean Hill at the International Neuroinformatics Coordinating Facility in Karolinska in Sweden. What are the core functions of BrainCode? Really, a central component is really the security and ability to integrate the data across the disease states and the modalities. Data capture is an obvious and core components that the platform needs to provide. So we really provide the tools for clinical imaging data, genomics data, proteomics data, etc. The requirement for collaboration is essential. And so really working on providing tools and also facilitating the collaboration between researchers, the technology industry, data scientists, pharmaceutical industry, and other partners. The reaching component is essential, as I mentioned as well, in terms of really being able to provide an augmented data sets and also leveraging existing data sets that we have across the province, but also outside of Ontario and Canada. So we work with hospital, data sets that include hospital records, research data, industry data, and international data sets in similar areas. Finally, the capacity for analytics is critical for the platform. This is really, I would say that we really have the data capture, collaboration, federations components with security and integration that are really in place, and the secure analytics is really the final piece that we're currently working on to really provide this capacity for data analysis, and not standard data analysis, I would say, but really being able to facilitate integrated data analysis. So looking at pipelines, visual analytics, specialized tools for analysis, and also big data approaches to data analysis. Parsing and security components of the platform are essential. Really, we have we've performed a number of high security checks and balances, including physical and technical processes of security with the system that's in place at the High Performance Computing Virtual Laboratory. We have been designated Privacy by Design ambassadors by the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario. We've conducted privacy impact assessments, threat risk assessments, which really ensure and demonstrate that the platform is secure and has the level of security and privacy required for handling patient data and making data available after de-identification processes have been in place. We also have an extensive policy and governance framework that really captures the sort of day-to-day function of BrainCode and the ways to interact with the platform. On the right, you see a diagram that shows the different zones and how we have the zone-based infrastructure for the platform. So we have the integrated discovery programs or third-party groups as well that would come and be able to store their data in Zone 1. This really allows them to give their own sort of workspace, their sort of private workspace, to store their data and make use of their data by analyzing it or collaborating with their internal collaborators. After an exclusivity period has passed, this data is then transitioned to Zone 2, where we store the data after it's been curated and versioned, so that we can really facilitate the process of federation and bringing data from external parties onto the platform. Finally, in Zone 3, we make the data available to third-party researchers through a workspace, and this is really the workspace that will be hosting a number of analytics tools and provide search and query capabilities on the data. This a little bit more detail into the flow of data through the zones that we have for BrainCode. So we have a researcher that's part of a particular project or program that would capture their data in Zone 1. This data would go through quality control and versioning, and this versioned data can then be shared with other researchers that are part of that same study. That data is then stored in Zone 2 for long-term storage and also facilitates federation. And based on when third-party researchers come to the platform and want to be able to access the data, they would go through what we call Zone 3, as I mentioned earlier. And Zone 3, they get this workspace instance that allows them to then download data from Zone 2 that's de-identified. And we really have two types of data. We have what we call public data and the control data. And this control data is released upon a data access committee review and also REB, or I think in the United States you might call IRB, or ethics approval, has been given for the release of data. Standardization is another key component for the platform. Really, we're collecting data from a number of different sites, for a number of different diseases and across different modalities of data. So really establishing standards in terms of how this data is captured is essential. It really gives us the ability to compare apples to apples across the data sets. So we've worked extensively on developing what we call common data elements across the different data modalities and the type of research that's being conducted. We currently have in place common data elements for demographics, for clinical data in terms of instruments and scales, and also initial set of common data elements for imaging. And we're currently also in the process of establishing common data elements for EEG and MEG data that's captured through the programs. In the future, we'll also be looking at setting standards for genomics and proteomic data capture. And you can access these actually online right now to see the standards that we actually adopt. Another big effort that we have is really focused on the notion of data harmonization. So this really sort of captures both the notion of federation and standardization into one. And working with other organizations across, right now, across Canada on how we can actually establish a form of data linking and a number of standards that we could use to see if there's any overlap between the data sets that we have and provide enriched data sets to the researchers on our mutual platforms. So this is an example with 5 other groups, and including also the 7th Maelstrom, who provides tools and software to help us accomplish this. To a little bit more into the notion of federation, secure data linkages is really what we're after. So being able to connect with other databases in a secure way, such that for example, we can actually bring together records of patients that may be the same in a partner database as they are in our database. But because we follow diligent guidelines in terms of privacy, we don't actually store any direct identifiers about patients on our platform. And to accomplish this linking, what we have is encrypted health card numbers that are stored in Ontario for patients in Ontario, and this covers the Ontario health card number. The system is called OHIP, and really allows us to see if there's any overlap between patients in the BrainCode database with patients that might have had hospital visits, for example, and that would be stored in other existing databases for hospital visits. And in this case, that would be ICES, the Institute for Clinical and Evaluative Sciences. What this really allows us to do is leverage these existing resources. Really allows us to augment our data sets and really provide a richer profile on patients for analytics. And we mentioned here how we're actually currently conducting a pilot with ICES using these encrypted healthcare numbers. So this is a little bit of a nuance, I think, with the United States. Where in Canada, or at least in Ontario here, we have the single payer system, which really allows us to see if there's any overlap in terms of patients participating in our studies with patients that are participating in either other studies for other research programs, or in terms of hospital visits at different institutions. Give you an idea of how this linkage of the data for federation takes place. With the healthcare numbers, we have each party that holds these encrypted healthcare numbers. The data records are then tied to these EHCNs. The comparison and matching is then takes place, where the encrypted healthcare numbers can be compared, and we can see if there's a match. And this is using homomorphic encryption technology. And finally, we have the de-identified records that are joined and returned to both parties. So this is really the data sets after they have gone through de-identification. We have these data sets that are combined, providing an augmented data set that is then returned to both parties. Another big component that I mentioned we're also actively working on is building this analytics capacity for BrainCode. And really the vision here is that we have a unique case where data comes from a number of different sources and a number of different formats. So we need the capacity to really build a platform for analytics that will facilitate research on these rich data sets that we have in a way that will provide the right tools for the different types of questions that the researchers will have. So the features that we see with this are really the diverse tool sets, tools for integrated data analysis, really facilitating the sharing and tracking of research data. The training of data scientists is essential for this to really help better understand how we can look at this data. We also have the ability to provide advisory services for researchers with this platform. Clinical trials recruitment operations also become possible. The encryption and data security services through the platform can also be an important feature that we can provide. And also other resources for small to medium-sized companies. The outcomes are really cross-modality discoveries, augmented data sets, clinical trial recruitment, and partnerships and collaborations that we're continuously engaged in. An overview of the different methods of analysis that are provided to the field of really science in general, but that we can also apply to neuroscience is listed here. So really looking at the number of techniques and methods that could be used to really develop these tools for integrated data analysis. So looking at data preprocessing, which is essential, classification and clustering methods, correlation and regression methods, of course. Predictive modeling will become, I think, increasingly important and powerful as a tool. And natural language processing is also essential, especially for this data that's unstructured or text data that's captured in clinics or in hospitals. Our approach to analytics is really done in a number of phases. We really have 3 phases that we're aiming to accomplish over the next 4 to 5 years. Really in phase 1, we're looking at having a core secure infrastructure to support the analytics workspaces. On top of this layer, we are working on facilitating data search and querying across the data sets that we have, providing specific data tools for analysis and pipelines is also essential, as well as general analytics environments. And we currently have we're testing in sort of the alpha stage SAS and MATLAB, for example, to provide to researchers to and to really look at their data. Finally, the visual analytics component, and this is key for research and clinicians who are maybe less computer savvy or less familiar in developing their own analysis models and scripts, but also have ideas on how they want to look at their data, and providing those tools for visually looking at the data and setting up the their different variables for looking at things like correlation, regression, variance, etc. And we're currently adopting the Spotfire platform and testing that platform out. In phase 2, we're really interested in the development of a space for developers really to come together and start looking at the data in new ways, providing their insight with maybe a computer science background, mathematics or statistics background, that can come in and really start manipulating the data and developing tools that could be added later on to brain code. A challenges space is also essential. We see this with a number of other organizations doing this more and more, and this really provides the opportunity for groups to come together, collaborate, as well as maybe compete on different problems and give rise to new solutions for the problem of integrated data analysis. Finally, providing those tools for integrated data analysis is key, and this is a final component that we really want to be able to address in this second phase. Finally, the last phase is really adding the autonomous analysis capacity to the platform, where really machine learning, artificial intelligence techniques can be used to reduce the complexity and the dimensionality of the data, and really become an assistive sort of tool or agent for researchers looking at data on brain code. Where are the overall potentials for brain code? Really, we're looking at amplified research outcomes, enriched patient data, optimized clinical trials, enhanced analytics. We also want to attract industry partnerships, engage and educate and empower the patients, finally improve healthcare outcomes. And really looking at enabling novel approaches to understanding diseases of the central nervous system. So this was the first part. I really want to give everybody a good idea of what we're doing here at the Ontario Brain Institute in terms of developing this platform, brain code. And I think what would be, I want to follow up with this on giving some insights that we've had on looking at this problem, stepping back a little bit and looking at this from a big science perspective, and working really with this notion of deeper data as well as broader data. So, stepping back, even outside of the field of health, we realize today that the data is really doubling every 2 years, and this is a source from EMC and the IDC, showing how today we're storing about 4.4 trillion gigabytes of data in 2013, or that was last year, and by 2020 we'll be at 44 trillion gigabytes. So it's growing at an exponential rate. We have the storage capacity, however, that's actually slowing down, and this might sound a little bit alarming. I mean, today we're storing, according to their estimate, about 33% of the data that's generated, and by 2020 we'll be only able to store about 15%. So this is it might be a bit of a cause for concern. It might also indicate that we need to develop these tools and ways to curate the data, to summarize the data, and provide a more rich, being able to process the data in a more that captures the underlying content in a more rich and meaningful way. On the upshot, we really have an increased awareness of the importance of tagging and analyzing the data. And so they've also estimated that there's an increase that will take place over the next about 10 years. So really looking at about 22%, right, that's being tagged and analyzed today, up to 37% in the near future. So this is good, and this is where we, as in the neuroscience field, we also want to be contributing in, and providing tools such as brain code for this are going to play an important part. Where can technology and ideas from big data help? Well, really in the field of analysis, of data capture, curation, search, storage, transfer, and visualization. I'd like to get into more detail for each of these, but I'm running a little bit short on time, so I won't be talking about this too much. But the idea here is to look at what solutions exist from the big data field that's more generally applied in various fields and in the industry, and how can we apply these to health science? So, borrowing for the notions, the core notions of big data, how do we apply this to big science? So you might be familiar with the 3 V's, and we have maybe even a 4th or 5th V. But I'll start with the notion of volume, and how do we translate this to big science? So we're thinking about really here about massive data sets of aggregated from aggregated participants, animal data, model data, all coming together. We can also talk about the variety of data, and we give a good example from the different programs that we fund here at OBI, that this interdisciplinary data sets from multiple origins, and different modalities: imaging, clinical, demographics, molecular models, etc. The notion of velocity, and this is also a critical notion and an interesting one to see how the dynamics of how data is currently being captured and the rate at which it's being released to the public for use is increasing. So we're looking now more at real-time collaborations, sharing, concurrent data capture sessions across the globe, the real-time analytics that becomes possible. Veracity. This is maybe less common when we talk about big data, but in big science, this seems to make a lot of sense. That's really the notion of having validated models, quality control, and data curation as being really essential for ensuring that the data is of value and will be meaningful for the downwards analysis. We access data. So we'll give some examples of what we're doing with BrainCode, but to give a more general idea, really we're looking here at the notion of open data, making the data available through sharing and collaboration. And there are terrific examples of other organizations doing this already. The Allen Institute, for example, doing this with their science program. The data space in Europe, based out of the INCF, the International Neuroinformatics Coordinating Facility. We also have Sage Bionetworks and their Synapse platform that are really promoting this sharing collaboration and having challenges as well to promote this collaboration across groups. In Ontario, we have the open data, and the government really supporting this move towards open data. And the ICGC portal is also an excellent example. Well, another way to also really be able to obtain and access these data sets is really working with researchers and institutions. So an important part of this is really first establishing a robust governance policies and data access rules, so that the researchers and institutions that you work with really understand what you're able to do and what you promise to be able to accomplish by making a platform available for them to use. We also want to engage researchers and institutions in a more direct way, by really working with different groups on a regular basis and really getting to know them and understanding their needs in terms of research and how you can actually provide a solution for them. We also need to adhere to the high security and privacy practices, and this is key to really ensure and that a confidence can be established between the researchers and the institutions, and also the solutions provider or the platform that you develop. We also want to facilitate collaboration and partnerships, and that's really going to be a final component to really bring the groups together and allow for the data to be shared in a more open and accessible way. An example of the different groups that we actually interact with is actually available on the neuroscience asset map that we have at the Ontario Brain Institute. And I invite you to visit this webpage. The link is at the bottom of the page here. And this really regroups the different organizations and individuals in the field of neuroscience across Ontario. Patient engagement is also essential. Really thinking about new ways to engage the patients is becoming increasingly critical. So thinking about patient portals, for example, where patients can have forms that they can fill out and really participate in the research in a more online or dynamic way. So we can think of groups like Cognicity that we have here in Ontario, or in the US we have patients like me that are really doing some interesting work in that field. Portable legal consent, or the notion of informed consent, really making the patients aware of what the research is about, what the study is about, and also how their data and their health information is going to be used is essential. A good example of this is led by Sage Bionetworks. Trials recruitment is also a fantastic way to get patients to be more engaged. And as we see today, a number of devices and apps are becoming increasingly available for monitoring health and sharing health data. So looking at mobile and smart devices, smart devices repeated here again, but also personal clouds. And this is a very interesting notion that a number of groups in North America are starting, and I believe in the rest of the world as well, where patients can actually have greater control over the data that they're collecting about themselves, and control who they actually release it to. So I invite you to look that up as well. For the outcomes, and this is going to be the final section of my presentation today, we really have a number of outcomes that can come from adopting this sort of big science approach. First, we're looking at the complexity across brain disorders in the case of neuroscience. We have a number of factors that take place at multiple levels. The genetic level, the proteomic level, the metabolic level, and also the phenotypic level. And by looking at a single disorder, might reveal obviously some very interesting things. But by combining these data sets together and looking at two or more disorders at the same time, we can then begin to draw correlations at multiple and across the levels for these different disorders. And this is really becoming more of a possibility with the technology and the fact that now data is being aggregated and standardized across disorders and modalities. Another big outcome from this deep and broad data approach, and by sharing and making data more available, is really this idea of becoming more efficient with the data. And here's a quote from the OECD. That one of the central goals of promoting data access and sharing is to improve the overall efficiency of publicly funded scientific research, to avoid the expensive and unnecessary duplication of data collection efforts. We also have the opportunity to improve the methods of discovery. Yesterday, we often had siloed data sets that were not aggregated or shared across different institutions or research groups. Today, we're getting to that point. We already have this broad data coming from a number of institutions, from hospital records, from visits, from maybe even data logs on various apps, which can be connected then with deep data. And deep data really being the research data that's conducted on the various patients for the different types of disease. And in the future, we really hope to reach a point where we get to develop more predictive models. Predictive and precise patient care is really what we're after. What are the improved research outcomes that we get? Well, we really get to empower the researchers by catalyzing collaborations and data sharing. We enable visual integrated data analysis, and this is another big important component of what we're doing is facilitating the interaction with the data. And also provide insight into the deep and broad data for really ultimately getting greater impact into providing health and health services. Finally, precision medicine, allowing investigation across diseases is becoming more possible. We can study disease markers at the biological level, the psychological level, and perhaps even at the social level. And also help discover unknown markers and treat individual differences, which becomes increasingly possible if we adopt this approach. So I think I've covered everything that I want to share with you today, and I'll open up to questions and comments.
Great, thank you very much, Francis. We do have a couple of questions at this point. I'll read them to you, and so you can think about them, and then you can go ahead and answer them. The first question is from Alex Bucco. In addition to imaging, genomics, clinical and proteomics, are you capturing metabolites and lipids? Is the data longitudinal? Are you collecting samples, brain, CSF, blood, or just data from individual labs?
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Very good question. So we're not currently. So we're working with a number of groups on from the federation component on being able to receive the data sets that they collect, the more basic science data sets that they collect through samples. But we currently do not have the capacity for storing samples. But we are working with different partners on looking at ways that we can actually make this possible, either from the not right now from the storage capacity, but more from the after the data has been processed, being able to absorb the results from this initial pre-processing and storing that onto the platform. But yes, it would cover the scope of the different data types across across the modalities for the different diseases that we're funding.
Great. The next question is from Penny Dax. Are there plans to allow the analytics themselves to be open, both in terms of tracking analyses on the data and sharing the analyses and algorithms across researchers? I'm thinking of the Synapse platform.
That's a fantastic question, and I think right now this is undergoing sort of plans. As I mentioned, we're working on the analytics platform right now, and we're building an initial stage to really have these workspaces available where the researchers can at least first perform the analysis. And adopting tools like Sage and the Synapse platform, for example, could be something that we could do. I mean, Sage Bionetworks, for example, makes this platform available as an open source tool. And we have started the evaluation of the platform. And we're looking at ways that we could actually make this available. So yes, I think this is the direction that we want to take, although we're not quite there yet.
All right. Are there any other questions? We've got about 10 minutes left and plenty of time for more questions for Dr. Jeanson.
Lenny, I did have one question for Dr. Jeanson. This is Jeremy. And I was curious, how do you create uniformity across all these different data sources? And for use to as it's compiled into this large network, ensuring that a data variable from one institution equates to and is uniform from other institutions, and that the people accessing this large data set have the understanding of the definition of each different data variable.
That's a great question. It's really something that's tackled through a number of ways. The first and foremost, what we're doing is really working on these standards. So by establishing standards, and we can really get the different sites to actually capture their data in a similar way, especially core. So it's not just about the data; it's also sometimes in terms of the experiments that they run. So if you could get somebody to run a resting state MRI across the different disease modalities, for somebody who's having an MRI done for depression, for example, with somebody who's having an MRI done for epilepsy, then you actually have, if you have common states that are being recorded and common variables that are being recorded, you actually allow then the data set to have commonalities down the line. So then the researchers can also add on additional scales or additional, obviously conduct their own experiments, but having some core core sets of experiments and variables that are held in common allows you to first bring the data together in a way that you can start to see, where they might correlate in a better way and where they differentiate from other sets. So that's the first step. The next step is then to really have this data go through a number of quality control and pipelines after it's been captured, which really ensures that the data set is void of any noise or minimize the amount of noise that you might have in the data set or errors. And finally, providing a tool that actually brings the various databases. So often these data, when they're captured, at least right now what we have in Brain Code is we'll have an independent tool for the capture of clinical data. We actually have 3 different tools for clinical data, depending on the needs of the researcher. We also have a separate tool for image data capture, and a 5th tool for molecular data capture from genomics and proteomics. Now those data sets sit on individual databases, so you need to actually then bring these data together in a central form so that you can actually query across the data sets. And so we've adopted right now a solution provided by IBM called Infosphere, and this is really a sort of data integration platform that allows us to query across the data sets. So these are really the steps that we have in place right now, and we've just really been able to experiment with Infosphere and looking at what the possibilities are there. But there will be still a number of challenges, as you mentioned, on being able to even get the researchers to understand the types of variables that they now have in front of them once they've been integrated, and looking at how to best approach that problem is an interesting one. One of the features that we hope will help is the visualization tools, but there are certainly going to be other challenges that we need to face.
Great. There, we do have another question from Penny Dax. You mentioned the growing personal data movement, with people collecting data on themselves and deciding to share or not. Can you clarify the plans of how that data might eventually be included and integrated with more traditional data being collected?
Excellent question. This is very new, fairly new stuff. I mean, really, we're looking at data coming from a number of different devices, a number of different even online services that people might be using, and I think one of the first challenges is really establishing a common technology and common sort of hardware network layer that provides the data, that makes the data available for integration into platforms. So us, when we're developing platform, we need to make sure that we adopt standards that exist, that might be established or recommended by the World Wide Web Consortium, for example, or other consortiums that establish standards. But we also need to make sure that we also have to encourage the developers of these apps and of these tools to abide by these standards and to facilitate the sharing of the data that's captured with the tools that they develop. So that's I guess an initial challenge that we're facing today, but it will definitely be overcome. Making it then available to the researchers is really a matter then of providing this maybe distinct federation component for this data coming from diverse sources. One way to do this is for us, for example, and these are things that we've been thinking of looking into, is really providing a patient portal where patients can really come into the platform, not just researchers or clinicians or other individuals interested in the data for analysis, but really individuals who want to come in and participate with the research. And here, providing a portal for patients that can come in, control this data that they want to release, maybe be more engaged in clinical trials, etc., becomes more of a reality. So we hope to develop that, and really the strategy right now is to use the existing sort of technology that we have to accomplish this.
Fantastic. So we have about 3 minutes to go. If anyone wants to sneak one question under the door before we close out the session, now would be the time. Go ahead and type it in. Otherwise, I will start the closing proceedings by thanking Dr. Jeanson for a great presentation and great Q&A. It's great to have you as one of Orion's many alliance partners. You guys are clearly doing amazing work up there that we totally support at Orion. It's very much on track with what we're trying to accomplish, and so it's just great to see that you and your institute and all the other organizations around the world, pushing toward the same goal.
Thank you. Yeah.
Our next webinar will be in November. We know that, and it will be Martin Hoffman Aparitis. And we're waiting to confirm some dates with him. It will be sometime before November 24th, but check this space and all our other internet and social media outlets for more information on that as we confirm that. Otherwise, I will again thank Dr. Francis Jeanson from the Ontario Brain Institute for a great presentation. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time on Orion TV. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.